Hello, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm putting together a process video for the week of June 12th through June 19th, 2022 in my Project Life album. As usual, I've printed out my photos ahead of time and written down some notes on my sticky note. And then I actually collected a bunch of ephemera during this week. Something I've started doing is in my album, as I'm living life, I have been putting an 8.5 by 11 pocket page in between the two empty pocket pages, just kind of sandwiched in there. And as I collect ephemera during the week that I'm living, I will just slip it in there so it's ready for when I'm ready to put the spread together. So for this spread, I decided to crush an older Becky Higgins kit. This is the Seafoam edition. Sorry to think about that. It's the Seafoam edition that was designed by Elise Blaha Crepe. And this one is super old. I want to say this wasn't one of the original 6 kits, but it was like there was one original and then they expanded to 6 kits and then they did like a second run where they brought on some additional designers, and I think it was then, so probably like 2014 or so. And so I have this kit. I love it. But there's so much repetition in these older kits and the rounded corners, which you guys know I hate the rounded corners. So I have to try to find ways to work around it. I do want to say that when I was recording this video, you might notice that I'm doing a voiceover on the entire thing and the speed is getting a little wonky on it. For some reason, when I was recording, I hit slow motion. I don't know how I happened to do that, but I recorded this video in slow motion, including my live speaking. So what I did was I put it into my video editing software and I sped it up extremely fast to counteract the slow motion. But this is in fact as fast as it will possibly go. But the entire video is not like that. Thankfully, I have quickly fixed it. But I did have to do a voiceover on the entire thing. So my first step here, once I have all of my pieces together, is to crop out all of my photos because I always want to make the photos the priority on my page. So I'm going to lay all of those out and make sure I have space for them. And then I will decide which cards to use. I had a lot of photos this week, just a lot happened. And because of that, you'll see I decide I don't end up using any of the ephemera that I collected, which is totally fine. I might put some of it aside for other projects like art journaling. The national park thing I will put aside for my national park album, and anything else. I have a pouch that I keep ephemera that is meaningful during the year that does not make it into my albums. Anything else will just go in the trash. So what I'm doing now is laying out cards from this core kit that I'm going to use. Because I don't like the rounded corners, I like to cut these cards up. And there's so many of them, so that's great because I end up using a ton of cards. I kind of just almost make them, almost disposable, where I'm just cutting as many as possible to get these cards used. So, and I am finding ways to get around the rounded corners. Now, it's not perfect, but I want to do everything I can to avoid putting rounded corners, which means not just slipping a 3x4 card in a pocket. I have to get a little creative with cutting and pasting and that type of thing to get rid of those rounded corners. So right now, I'm just laying everything out with some ideas of where I want to put things on the spread. And most pockets are going to have more than one card in them because I need something to get rid of those rounded corners. So by using multiple cards, I can kind of adhere them together and crop them down and get rid of those corners. I also like to use these cards as embellishments. I do this with all sorts of Project Life cards, not just these core kits, but the core kits especially, just because there are so many cards that are repeats. And I know I'm not going to use them as journaling cards because of the rounded corners. So finding ways that I can cut them up and turn them into embellishments makes them way more versatile and allows me to actually put a dent into my stash. So what I'm doing here is just laying out cards with an idea of where I want them to go. And I know it looks a little crazy right now, but I promise it's going to start coming together as I crop things down and cut them out. So now I'm just moving all of the remaining pieces to the side. I do think I was going through a little bit more and finding a couple more pieces here that I wanted to work with. And I do end up going back into the kit to pull out a few more things, but putting it to the side now allows me to kind of focus on what I'm doing. So you'll see a lot of these cards have this like circle on them that's slightly, I think it's about 1 inch or maybe a little bit bigger than 1 inch, because I was trying the 1 inch punch and it was too small. So this is a 1.5 inch circle punch. So what my thought here was I was just going to punch out a bunch of these and use these circle die cuts now as a primary embellishment across the spread. Now, this is a lined card and another journaling card, and what I decided to do is adhere them in this way where I cropped off the side to get rid of the corners. Now, I will admit I don't absolutely love how this card comes out, and there's another one I do with a similar treatment, and I don't really love how that one turns out either, but they do work, and you do get rid of the rounded corners. I also cropped some of these pattern ones down, sort of treating them like pattern paper to add some interest to the side of my 4x6 photos and a base there to hold the circle die cut that I created. On the 3x4 cards, I'm adhering some of these circle die cuts, and then I usually have it going off the edge so I can trim off part of the circle there, and I think that that looks super more grounded than when you have it just kind of floating in the middle of the circle. So there are also these large circle embellishments or circle patterns on some of the cards, and I cut this one out, and I was going to put it on that photo there, but I just didn't like the way it looked. I thought it was just too big. It took up too much of the photo. I actually like the photo, and I don't want to cover it up, so I put that to the side, and I'm working on something else. So this one here is a 3x4 card that's just a pattern card, and I wanted to put that photo on top of it. So what you kind of saw me do there was I cut the card in half and then adhered the rounded corner sides together so that the place where I cut would become the new corners that are square, and the rounded corners are hidden behind the photo. The hexagon one, I did something similar where I cut off the edge to make the corners square, and then now it was smaller than 4x6, but I hid the gap behind the photo. And then I used that journaling card as a journaling spot on top of the 4x6 card. And that piece right there is kind of hidden behind the photo. And I know it still has rounded corners, but for whatever reason, the rounded corners don't bother me when they are journaling spots on top of a page. I just don't like the rounded corners at the edge of the cards. So this one was a little bit trickier. Because of this pattern, I needed to back the corners with matching colors, and I couldn't get it perfect. So one of the corners had that aqua color. So I found another card in the kit that had the aqua color and used that to back the corner. Two of the corners were white, and that was easy to match. One of the corner, the bottom left there, it had half aqua and half white. There was just no place on a card that I could get that exact pattern other than cutting up and one of the cards that matched this one. These older core kits don't have a ton of repeats of the 4x6 cards. They only have it for the 3x4 cards. So I wasn't able to cut up another one of these 4x6 cards as my backer. So there is a little gap there where it's white behind it and aqua in the front. And honestly, you can't even really see it when you're looking at it in the video. I can't see it that well. I can see it in person, but I do think that the card really kind of gives the look of squared corners, even though if you look more closely, you can tell that the corners are in fact rounded and there's just something behind it. I think that that's sufficient though for my purposes of just trying to get these cards used and get the card pockets filled without those corner gaps. So this week was really busy, which is why I have so many photos. On Saturday, my daughter and I had kind of like a girls' day. We went to the mall, we went out to lunch, we went and got coffee, we went to Target. So I have that photo of us in a dressing room. We were trying on some dresses, and so I journaled on there about our day. And then on this card, I'm journaling about Father's Day because Father's Day was Sunday. And so the photos on the far right there, actually almost all the photos on the right are from Father's Day. So I wanted to journal about that day and what we did and put all of the photos surrounding it. Then this card here that says currently, I'm creating my list of bullet point items that happened this week. Some of them have photos, some of them don't, some are just stories. So like the first one was that Tuesday was the last day of class for my daughter. She's in high school, so they did have finals for another couple weeks, but this was the last day of actual class, and I have a photo there of her with her favorite teacher and one of her best friends, so I wanted to make note of that. I also had just a few other notes of things that happened that didn't have photos. Just a brief overview of the week. As usual, I'm using my sticky notes that has some of my notes about the spread or about this week in creating that list, just because I don't want to forget any stories that I wanted to include. So now I feel like it needs some more dimensional embellishments besides those heart pieces that I had pulled over. So I pulled out my tray of chipboard shapes that are related to food. I found that this spread, for whatever reason, had a lot of food-related pictures. So I dug through here and found these matching chipboard pieces that all kind of went together. I think they were from like an old foodie release from Ali Edwards, and they are all food-related words. So I paired them with a white word phrase strip on a couple of the cards as just a repeated embellishment cluster. So it has a white word phrase strip sticker, and then a black chipboard word sticker. That's a tongue twister, right? And I just included on a few of those cards that had photos of food or my coffee, or that you can see there's a photo of an apple growing on a tree. We have apple trees and we are getting our first apples. They're a little small to eat at this point, but it's still fun to kind of document their process. I also pulled out this chipboard piece from my stash that says summer on it that I thought looked really great in the middle of the sky of that photo. And then I'm going through a few more of my chipboard, and I pulled out this one that says make it happen that was from an older story kit. I can't remember what story kit it was right now. And I'm putting that on the photo of me doing yoga. And now I'm ready to call this spread done. I feel like the added chipboard gave it enough dimension that it looks, it looks complete to me. I think I really like cutting up the cards as my main source of embellishments, but because they're all paper, I personally feel like the spread needs a little bit of dimension, and chipboard always fulfills that for me. Plus, it gives me the opportunity to dig into my chipboard stash as well. So that's my entire video or my entire process. Thanks so much for being here. As always, let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thank you.